Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Storytime video. In this video, we're going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge. If you're new around here, do consider subscribing so that you never miss out on another episode. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some funny Reddit stories. My friend's ex-wife gets his family's business shut down and burns their lives to the ground. Not what you may think. This story isn't about me, but two people I'm friends with. We'll call one Ray and one Justin. I'm posting this with Justin's permission, and he'll probably be reading the thread. Some background. Ray and Justin grew up in an extremely restrictive, insular religious community that borders on being a cult. They both read a lot from a young age, even though reading outside of the religion's material was discouraged. And so both of them grew increasingly skeptical and dissatisfied with their environment due to having this peek into the outside world. In high school, this shared mindset brought them together, and they started secretly dating. For context, dating was absolutely strictly verboten in this religious community. You went straight from single to married with zero in between. So when Justin and Ray's parents caught them dating, they forced them to get married. To be clear, it wasn't like they were even having sex. They basically were driving around together and holding hands in the downtown square where all the kids hung out. Very tame. Sheltered kid stuff. Ray and Justin started living together as husband and wife, but unfortunately for their families, putting those two together doubled their resiliency, and together they cooked up a plan to get out. They set up a secret bank account at a bank outside the religious community's influence, since their families had access to their accounts, and everyone who worked at the main bank was also in the same community and gossiped about everyone's financial transactions. They started squirreling away money in small amounts the family wouldn't question being missing from their paychecks. When they were 20, they finally had enough money to start over, and they got out. They basically left their house in the dead of night with nothing but what they could fit in their car and uprooted to live across the country. Pretty quickly after they moved, they decided to get amicably divorced, since they never wanted to be married anyway. They still lived together for a while and basically became something between platonic roommates and each other's only family. Over time, they started dating other people. Some partners were scared off by the weird relationship between them, but most got it, and understood that Justin and Ray had basically bonded through mutual trauma. I also met both of them during this time, and we became close friends. This whole time, both their families and other members of their community were relentlessly harassing them. People were showing up at their house at all hours, and they had reason to believe that people were trying to steal their identities over the years. Though, they'd fortunately both put a freeze on their credit card, so nothing ever came of it. Then, Justin had a bad accident. A really bad accident. He was on his bike and a car blew through a stop sign without slowing down and plowed right into him. He had to be rushed to the hospital and landed in the ICU. Ray was his emergency contact, and I was with her and some other friends when she got the call. I immediately drove her to the hospital with a couple of other people, and she was melting down, understandably. The hospital staff wouldn't let us all in when we got there, but they let Ray in. She came out periodically to let us know what was going on. Justin wasn't unconscious, but he was totally out of it and didn't seem to know she was there. Probably from the painkillers, but she was convinced that he had permanent debilitating brain damage, and basically the group of us were just soothing her and reassuring her it would be fine. A friend of ours who worked at the hospital as an MRI tech was also stopping by when she could on her breaks and calming down Ray. We'd been there all night and part of the day at this point, and the medical staff was giving us reason to be hopeful. But things got worse. To this day, no one knows how they found out, but 14 hours after Justin's accident, his parents, uncles, and grandfather showed up. They immediately had us all removed from the ICU, Ray included. Unfortunately, as his ex-wife, she was no longer his legal next of kin and had no rights against his blood family. At this point, she was absolutely hysterical and inconsolable. She was convinced Justin's family would hurt him. I'm ashamed to say, all three of us that were there thought she was overreacting. We all knew Ray and Justin had left an effed up situation, but it wasn't like his own family would do anything to impede his recovery. She was getting angry with us for trying to calm her down, and tried to explain that according to their religion, she and Justin deserved punishment from God, and only the greatest suffering could prompt repenting and redemption. She said their families embraced this thinking and wanted them to suffer, because it would prove that they did the wrong thing by leaving, and suffering would drive them back to the fold. She said as long as though Justin was with his family, he wouldn't be safe. Our friend who worked for the hospital came and found Ray at that point. She made Ray swear up and down she wouldn't tell anyone she told her this, because she could get in deep trouble for releasing privileged information to someone unauthorized. But she'd caught wind that Justin's parents were aggressively demanding the hospital release him into their care, and they were involving lawyers. The hospital was currently refusing because Justin wasn't stable enough to leave, but our friend warned Ray that as soon as Justin got to be stable, or the lawyers scared the hospital enough, it's possible the parents would be able to take Justin. This shocked the rest of us. Realizing his parents were not only willing to remove Justin from the hospital that had saved his life in the condition he was still in, but they were actively trying to do it, made us really get, for the first time, why Ray was going out of her head with fear. At this point, Ray snapped into a do-or-die mode. Convinced that Justin was about to literally die if she didn't act, she decided she would do everything in her power to start a fire at home so that Justin's family would want to run back to put it out. And this wasn't too hard, because she'd had a lot of dirt on the whole community she came from. Like a madwoman, she started blowing the whistle all over Justin's family. She called the IRS's fraud hotline and detailed all the ways the family's business was committing tax fraud. She submitted an ATF tip about that same family business was illegally selling firearms without a license and without following any of the proper protocols, and was knowingly selling guns to convicted felons. She reported one of Justin's uncles for owning several guns as a convicted felon. She also reported Justin's mum's unlicensed daycare business, which was apparently extremely shady, including having over 30 children packed into one house, with Justin's mum as the only adult and many of the childcare duties being farmed out to Justin's 12 and 14-year-old sisters. She called CPS on Justin's uncles and his parents for keeping their children out of school, and for physical abuse in one uncle's case. In all these reports, she provided extensive details. She finished her calls and emails, and then she waited. We all waited for several hours, and nothing happened. Then, miraculously, Justin became lucid enough to understand what was going on and make his own decisions, and he kicked his family out again. From there, began a slow but steady path to recovery. In all the relief and excitement to see Justin over the mend, we'd almost forgotten about Ray's campaign of desperation, until a couple weeks later, when the screaming voicemail started pouring in to both of them. First, the business was being investigated by the IRS, then it was being investigated for illegal firearms dealing. Then, the daycare was getting investigated. At first, Ray felt a little guilty, but then she was like, you know what? No regrets. They would have killed Justin. From what they've been able to piece together in the year and a half since this happened, the business has gone under and the daycare is shuttered. The uncle is 6 months into a new 5-year prison sentence for firearm possession. CPS investigated, which scared the crap out of the family, but nothing really came of it, which is especially sad in the case of the cousins being physically abused. That said, the parents are now too scared to keep the kids home from school, and with the unlicensed daycare shut down, the mum's not exploiting her daughter's labour anyway, so she has no incentive to keep them at home. So Justin's little siblings are at least getting their education. Justin and Ray are both happy and thriving. Justin, unfortunately, will never fully recover from the accident. He has some permanent neurological damage that results in tremors, but he's pumped to be alive. He can work a full-time job, he can still be pretty physically active, and as far as I'm concerned, he wins. Creepy guy lies about his age, takes me on a cheap date, and sticks me with an $80 dinner bill. I was 17 when this happened. He had told me he was 19. It's also not illegal in my state. I met him through a friend of mine. I saw him on her friend's Snapchat story while I was using her phone, asked for his snap, and he added me back. You know, the whole process. I disclosed that I was 17, and he said he was fine with it seeing as he had just turned 19. Anyway, we talked for a few days, and I learned that he lived not too far away from me, worked at a mall nearby, and that we had a lot in common. We planned our date for a Tuesday, which was strange, and he drove me to a theatre that's about 40 minutes from my house and an hour from his. Where I live, there are 2 much closer theatres, so this was pretty weird. We get there, and I ask him if we can get snacks. He says no, and that he plans to go to dinner afterwards. I noticed as he bought the tickets they were only $12 for both of us combined, but it didn't really matter at the time. It will. We saw a movie I had really no interest in seeing, but I guess it was alright. He tried to do the old arm around the shoulders trick, which I quickly shut down and asked him politely not to do again. He seemed alright and apologetic. Anyway, we leave the theatre and he asks where I would like to eat. I say Chili's. So we go to Chili's. I, at the time, had been working at McDonald's and was very excited when I got a notification on my phone as we drove that said my first paycheck had been deposited into my account, so I stupidly said out loud, "Just got paid," and that was my downfall. We get there, and the first thing he immediately does is order 4 appetizers, and to my horror, orders a drink. and when the waitress cards him, he hands her a horizontal ID. I don't know if other states are the same, but in mine, you get a vertical ID until you're 21, and a horizontal one when you're older than 21. I asked him if it was a fake ID, and he just said, "No, I'm 23. I used to be a real pushover kind of girl. Also, the time was nearing 11, and I was worried my parents would have been mad at me if I called them to pick me up, seeing as the restaurant was a good 30 minutes from my house. I was also scared that he would get angry or violent if I tried to leave, so I didn't try. He gets his drink and orders 2 more throughout the night, on top of a steak, a bunch of sides, and of course, 2 desserts. All I had was a burger that I didn't even finish because I was so nervous that I was on a date with an adult 6 years older than I, who'd also been drinking. Anyway, the waitress comes around and she nicely hands him the bill and says, "When you're ready?" Without hesitation, he grabs it, hands it to me with a smile and says, "You got this, right?" I didn't even know what to do. I was so meek and easily manipulated that I just put my card in the billfold. I left a $7 tip for the woman, so the bill came out to about $87. We got in the car, he drove me home, tried to give me a kiss and said, "Let's do this again." I blocked his number as I walked down my driveway. Flash forward to this past summer when I was 18 at the shopping mall he worked at with my friends. Due to some injuries in my legs, I had gained a bit of weight, but nothing major. We were in the store he worked at, which is a pretty big store. I had forgotten he'd worked there until I saw his smug ass, and it was clear he remembered me. He came up to us with a crap-eating grin and asked us if there was anything he could help us with. We didn't need help, just looking around, but he made sure to say to me, "Wow, you've fluffed up since the last time I've seen you. You look good." Now, I'm a curvy girl. I get this sort of thing a lot. But on top of the bill, the drinking, the lying, and the creepiness that he thought a date with a 17-year-old was acceptable, I had had it. I just smiled politely at him, asked my friends if they wanted to go to another store, and as we left, I called the store and demanded to speak with the manager. I was pretending to sob, saying how he had made fun of my body, acted poorly to my friends and I, that I would never be stepping foot in the store again, and that I wanted corporate's number to lodge a complaint for harassment. You know, the typical over-exaggerated BS. I didn't throw any sexual harassment terms because I'm not going to accuse anyone of being something like that, but I was making a scene. I lodged a complaint with 5 different department leaders at the corporate call centre and told them I felt uncomfortable shopping in any of their stores ever again because of the treatment I had been subjected to. Blah blah blah. 6 days later, hanging out with the friend who set me up with him, she asked me if I remember blank. Yes I do, I say. She shows me his Snapchat story, all black, white text. "Cannot believe I just got fired after 2.5 years for no reason." Turns out his company was an at-will employer. They didn't even have to give him a reason for firing him. He probably doesn't even know it was me. Well, he might now, but that's fine. He was working his way through film school and had to pick up an overnight job at a fast food place to make ends meet. Lol, maybe this belongs in r/am I the asshole? In my opinion, I think she did the perfect thing and she's not the asshole in this situation. That dude is a weirdo for being a 23-year-old, like come on. Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you did, remember to leave a like on it and comment down below which one of the stories was your favourite. If you want to check out some of the other videos, they're on screen right now. But thank you again and I will see you tomorrow.